the other half, right, of video. The most important part, right? So we say the best for last, because if it wasn't for the audio, where would our pictures be, right? So just so I have a feel for who's in the audience. So how many of you are editors? Okay, cool. I've edited. Yay. All right, thank you. And then how many of you are audio artists or work in audio? Okay. Some both, right? Sometimes we have to do a little bit about. What about colorists? Yeah, color, visual effects. Yay! So, so we got the whole ship, right? A little bit of everything. So that's awesome. So what I'm going to focus in this session is some of the awesome tools in DaVinci Resolve 15 for audio. But these are friendly enough. You can, if you're an audio expert, if you are, whether you're a mixer or your dialogue editor, whatever elements you use, you can do this, obviously. And also if you're an editor, there's going to be times where you need to step in. It's like, gosh, I just need to take it a little bit further. Or some of you do in-house work where you really have to wear many different hats depending on the day. Or you need to just fix that one thing. Well, you can. So I'll be showing you all of those things as well. And maybe if you're not doing it yourself, if you know what you could do, or you could tell someone else, hey, you know, you could do that in Resolve also. So anyway, I'll show you what I'm excited about. I'm kind of an audio geek myself. I was an editor forever. I still do editing, but you know, I started in film, so I mean, and to me, the whole process, and I was a CMX editor, and I was online, and I think I was one of those 6 people that used the laser discs on the CMX 600 way back. That was a great idea for about a minute, but what was good about that was it was random access, right? That was early on when the whole idea of not having to work with pneumatic tapes or with 1-inch machines. You know, there's a lot of things. It was a huge leap, right? And it set the stage for everything else. So I worked on the very first systems of lots of things, but I've seen it evolve. And you know, the storytelling is the same. These are all tools. The idea is, you know, your job, your audience does not care how you got there. Okay, maybe there's 2 people that care. But most people don't care how it got there. They just want it to be awesome, right? And so our jobs, of course, is the one, we have to have a tool to make things awesome. And we all have to learn lots of different tools, and we have to evolve, otherwise we don't have a lot to do, right? So anyway, so I'm excited about this. So I'm going to, and I've also obviously done a lot of audio work, and so I'm really excited to work with these tools and now to show you the field trip that it takes, or the process going from editorial over to audio post-production. So in your own workflows, you all know what that takes, right? You've now finished, you've locked picture, whether it's a short film, a commercial, a television show, whatever it is, it's time to go to your audio post to do your dialogue editing or whatever other work you need to do. What does that take? Well, I'm going to show you. I'm in DaVinci Resolve 15. I'm here on my edit page. This is locked. I'm ready to go to audio post, and all I do is go like that. Okay. I'm now in audio post. Okay. I don't have to send any files to anybody. I don't have to conform anything. I don't have to make a reference video. I do nothing. It's the same timeline, same project, same media. So, and I can make my own version if I want to, and so other people can continue to work, but we can also be on the same project, just different timelines. So here I am in audio post. Now, I'm going to show you all different types of features as I go. There's a lot to show, and obviously if we have questions, specific things, I'll try to save as much time on the end. There might be places where I could stop and go in a little bit deeper if we need to. But for starters, I was just showing you that when you go from edit to audio post, the playhead's in the same exact position. If you want to see your video, you can just go over to the meters up at the top, and that's your monitoring panel. And this lets me see all my audio that's in my project. It has meters for every single track. I also have my loudness meters, my control room. I can change to multiple speaker sets, multiple outputs, whatever it is I need to monitor, I can do all of that right from here. And this is my viewer, so it's kind of small right now. I can also obviously go out to a separate source monitor if I wanted to, or if I have another room and I want to send it out for the client, they can see it on their big screen while I'm looking on my little screen. You can also just click right here to pop this out, and I don't have to do it with the playhead stopped. I can do it while it's playing. There. And I could bring this out. It's a standalone window, so I can change the size of it as needed, and I can even close my meters up. So if I want to see the video, I can do that. I did not have to make anything. This is a composite of the video that came from the edit page. So very simple to work with. It's exactly the right video. I don't have to worry about conforming or any missed frames. That's zero possibility. okay, because it's the exact same thing.
Can that screen be dragged over to another monitor?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you do that in video also? In edit?
In the edit page, there are two, like you could set your mixer onto a separate monitor, or you could move this as a free-floating window. So if I had a separate monitor, I could go to that right now. If I decided to mirror or to set this up differently, I could do that, yes.
Okay.
So, yes. So I'm going to keep this up for just a couple minutes. I'll just make it smaller. And I can put it wherever. So this is just your standard timeline. Now it's going to work like anything else. I'm going to point out these controls at the top because most people don't know they're here. How many of you have worked with Resolve at any version of DaVinci Resolve? Okay, for anything. Okay. So is anyone on 15 now? Version first. Okay, good. Well, Beta 2 did come out yesterday. So, and there's some things that have it's fixed some things. So that's a continual effort until it actually releases, which won't be that long. So, but it is, there's always update if you can, if you're working on 15. What I was going to point out right here is we have instant mute. You can adjust your volume, although I normally don't. And then you also have your dim button, which people aren't always aware of. So that's going to knock it down by 20 decibels. I'm down here. So if I hit this dim, that means your client asks you a question or someone comes in and has something and you're in the middle of doing something, you don't really want to stop. You don't have to. You can just dim it and answer the question, the bathroom's down that way, and then you can go back to work because nobody cares what you're doing.
Can you shortcut that?
I never tried. That's a really good question. We can check that at the end or try it. You can shortcut a lot of things. I'd have to look. But anyway, there's the dim right there. And of course volume, and then that's also instant mute if that's what you need as well. So while we're wandering around through the interface, just over here on the right hand side, you already saw the meters that I can show or hide as needed. I'm all about saving my real estate. At this moment, since I only have one screen, it's really about the real estate. I also don't have the resolution the way I normally do so that you can see it. So again, real estate. So on the right hand side, I have my inspector, and what's really nice about the inspector is I can see information on any clip by just selecting it. So right now I just selected a clip, and automatically you can see your volume. You can make adjustments, keyframes if you need to. Something new is right here, the pitch. Now, some people are like, who cares about pitch? Well, I do, because I use it all the time. I can take a sound effect that's just a little nerve grating, like an alarm or something, and I can make it worse. I can raise or lower it. But what's nice, if you look at the pitch, and this is every clip, I can go up or down by 24 semitones. That is 2 full octaves every single clip. Now, obviously, you're not going to do it that far and everything, but I'm going to tell you, a voiceover, or if you have a character, something where their voice is just a little bit grating, you knock it down by 1 semitone, maybe 2, and it changes their voice in just the right way. They won't even know. Right? No, but seriously, you could do some great things by it's just something that comes in really handy. So, and if you've never tried it, try it. Okay. So even on your own voice, but this works really well. So that's on every single clip. I have that ability. You also have down here, let me use this clip here. So I have my pitch. We also have a 4-band EQ, which also has your high and low pass if you want to use those. It also, what's nice about this on every single clip is if you just have that one little thing, you just kind of smooth something out, you can do it right here. If you already know that you want to affect the EQ, you can do that right on a clip. You don't have to, but just letting you know that that's available without having to add anything else. Now we also have, on this particular clip right here, I also have a de-esser. And this is one of, and I'll just go ahead and open this up, this is one of our Fairlight effects. We now have a full set of Resolve or Fairlight effects that come with Resolve 15, and these are going to work on all platforms, so that's Windows, Mac, and Linux without a dongle. You don't have to do anything extra, and these come with the free version, and they work. So it's the effects that you want to use, and I will show you the list in a couple minutes. I just happen to have my de-esser up because it's very simple to use. If you've never used a de-esser, then you won't care probably. But for those of you who actually work with a de-esser and need to just knock down that sibilance a little bit, and it depends on the character, then you can do that really easily. The interface is super simple to work with. And that's it right there. And you can add multiple effects to a single clip, unlimited, or you can add like 6 per track. And then you can do submixes and things like that if you need to. I'll show you that later. So that's right here, and again, it's in the inspector, so any effects that happen to be applied to a clip will all show up in the inspector as well. So that's right here on the right-hand side. We also have our mixer, and the mixer is going to show you a channel strip for every single track in your timeline. So if you only have one track, you're going to have a very small mixer. If you have multiple tracks, it'll come out to about half page, and then you can scroll through it, but this is how it works. And this will also show your panning controls. Every single track has a 6-band EQ. On the track, you also have your dynamics. So on every single track, without adding anything else, you already have an expander and a gate. You have your compression, and you also have a limiter. And these are all independent of each other, but they're all combined into one interface. So if you need those when you're doing your work, you can add those right here. So that's your mixer. Go ahead and hide that. Let's hop over for a moment over here to the left. I'm going to show you a couple other things we have. Here's my media pool. And what's new in DaVinci Resolve 15 is we now on our media pool have a source viewer for looking at your audio source. And this is really helpful because a lot of times you'll have your edit's been finished, but you're working with the dialogue and there's one word that you've got to replace, and you don't want to have to go re-record it, you just want to go into another take. Well, you could just hop over into your source media. This works just like on the edit page. Over here's my edit page. If I were the editor, here's my media pool, and I can access my footage, right? Same exact media pool is also over here in the Fairlight page. And the source viewer, instead of looking at the video, because I'm not editing video here, I can go in and I can find my audio. I can scrub through it. You can use your J, K, and L keys to scrub through if you want to. You can mark your ins and outs. You can even zoom in. Up here at the top, you could change the zoom level, so I can really zoom in if I'm looking for just one word and I want to mark an in and an out. Mark your ins and outs or whatever, and then you can edit with it. So that's very simple to use, and then that's new in 15. Something else, let's go look at some sound effects for a minute. One thing that I find very cool is if I select a clip, let's say this one right here, it always shows all of your source channels. So if you notice, I see 2 channels, I know it's a stereo clip. What about, let's say this one, again, a stereo clip. And then sometimes you may have one that is, let's find a good one here. This one. So this one has 6 different channels, so I know, okay, wait, this is a 5-1 surround clip. Awesome. So now what do I do with it? Well, if I want to edit this to the timeline, and I'll go close this for a minute. So if I want to edit this to the timeline, if I were to bring this into just any old track, it's only going to give me the 2 channels because this is a stereo track. It's not going to remap an entire track based on a clip. It's going to map that track to whatever that first clip is or whatever that's set up to. However, so this is basically just giving me my first 2 channels, the left and right. However, let's undo that. If I bring it down to the bottom, and I'm going to do that now, I'm going to make a little more room here. I think I made it mad. Okay, I definitely made it mad, sorry. Well, what I'm about to tell you, let's see what happens here, I kind of know. If I drag this to an empty space, it's going to create a track to match that footage. And let's hope it actually does that. This is what happens when you click really fast.
It actually did that with the stereo tracks, right? It added those gray ones at the bottom.
No, these
No?
were already, this was
Oh,
here
okay.
from my last
It
demo,
just
and I had
popped
forgotten
up.
to delete
Yeah,
it, so I was
okay.
really hoping, here, I'll just kill it. Yeah, let me save you some trouble. Bye. Come on. Sorry.
Crash.
There we go.
Bingo.
Yeah, that's what I meant to do that. So watch how fast it comes back. It's awesome. So I killed it. So that was me not deleting it in my previous one. But I'll show you this now. It really is awesome. And go.
So is a 5-1 track in both that you set up in Fairlight and you switch over to the edit, it's gonna still be a 5-1 track,
Correct.
right?
But the
And a 5-1 track has 6 tracks of audio
correct.
in it.
6
Gotcha.
channels, yes, because it includes your LFE. So
Right.
yes. So for example, let's go back to those sound effects now. And here's I just made my track smaller because one thing you'll see. Notice how I have these stereo tracks here, and I have 3 stereo tracks, and I have some mono tracks. If I go to the edit page, you don't see that on the edit page. The edit page doesn't always show you those channels. It just shows you individual tracks. You don't know what you're working with when you're on the edit page, which is fine when you're editing. But for audio, we really want to know what we're working with. So let's go get that. Let's go get that sound effect again, and it's right here. Here's my surround sound effect. I'm going to bring that to an empty space, and if I let go, it automatically creates a track with the proper number of channels. So there's my 6 channels ready to go, and that'll play perfectly. So I don't have to guess that one. Now here here's another track, and I could bring that one in, and you notice that I get the stereo because that was a stereo clip. And then once I have that, I could put like sound effects together or not. It just depends on what you want to do. So that part's useful. Something else we have now is, how many of you have like a library of additional sound effects, whether you use them for work or stuff that you bought, it's on another drive or a server, yes. And it could be music or it could be sound effects. And we can have tens of thousands of these, right? And they're just in library after library. And who wants to put those in the project? I mean, a lot of times, like a project like this, I might grab a handful of things that I know I'm going to use real fast because I pre-picked them and I'm like, okay, I know I want those, but now I got to go get that other stuff. Well, the good thing about other stuff is we now have, right here, if you go to Sound Library, you can now create a database on your right on your computer, or you can index it right to that space, or you could create a database wherever it originally. Let me just show you where these are. Right here's my database. So in version 15, the original beta, you had to make a Postgres database, which is not a big deal. You didn't really have to have a server or anything. You just needed to make your database there. Now I can just make one anywhere and just make a blank database. That's all I have to do is right here, new database. Create it and call it sounds. If you have 15 different sets of sounds you like to work with and you want to keep them separate, make different databases for them. This is nothing. All right, just make new local databases right on your computer. Doesn't mean you have to put everything in it. And then once you get, I'm gonna close this. Let's go back to my project, which is right here. Because it doesn't have to, it's not in your project itself. They're just separate databases, and all those are going to do is they're going to store an index of your sound effects. So for example, right here I have one that I made, and it's this one right here. And if I search it, here's my sound effects. See that? That's a sound effects library that literally is sitting right here. I put it on the computer. I did that. I just hit it. It didn't die. See? That was me. Looks the same though, doesn't it? Scared you. No, I just did a hide. So on the desktop, I have a little folder, but that could also be from anywhere if you want to index it. Once you've created it, you just choose the database you made. In this case, I made that one called Sound Effects Archive. And then you just come up here and say Add Library. And you point to your library wherever it happens to be on another drive. You probably have that huge drive that's nothing but sound effects or libraries or whatever. Just point to it.
How long does it take to archive? I mean, obviously it's going to depend on.
If it's
on
10,000, it's going to take a few minutes. Go get a coffee. If it's 1,000, it's not that long.
Right. So what if it's 10,000? I've indexed it, I've got it, but it's something that I want to take with me from location to location. Do I have to re-index it every time?
No.
Or once I create that index and it lives on that, can I make it live on that drive with the sound effects, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
then I can carry that with me no matter where. And
You can totally
Resolve
do
will
that,
pick
yes.
it right back up again.
Correct. It's
Okay.
just whatever you set up as your database. It could be local on your system or it could be on another.
on the-
Yes.
Okay.
So that's not a problem, and you can save it wherever you're saving your project. Just you'll know. I mean,
Right.
that's nothing, and so
Okay.
it's just the index. And then what's nice about it, here's where it gets even better. So for those of you who work with sound effects, one of the things we don't want to do is, we're not editing picture, and we don't want to sit there and have to drag things in timeline and move them around. So if
Right.
you found a spot, and again, you can bring up your meters if you want to look at your video. You can have just your video showing. It just depends. But let's say I know exactly what sound effect I want. I want it in this spot. I know my track. Okay, so I'll select the track. Sorry, wrong mouse. And then if I select a sound effect that I want to use, you can audition. There's a button right here. So let's say I've previewed it. It's exactly what I'm looking for. You can even mark ins and outs, of course. But if I audition it, it's going to drop it right into that track in that spot. I can then play it and hear it in context with the other tracks. And if I love it, then I'm good. I say confirm and I move on. If I didn't like it, I say cancel and it pops it right out. I can go find another sound effect and say, I want to hear this one.
That's great.
No, that's not it. I don't want that one either. And so you can go through and find whatever you need, and I'll keep auditioning until you get exactly the right sound. Again, you can hear it with your other tracks and know it's exactly right, and just confirm and then move. You can set markers and then move to the next marker and do your next sound. So when you're in that mode, it's very easy to do that work. And so this is a huge huge thing that's brand new, again, with DaVinci Resolve 15. So I'm really excited to have this here. But there's more. So I'm going to show you some other kind of cool things that we can do. And again, it's not for every workflow, but there's so much involved with audio, it just depends on what you're doing. For example, and even if you're an editor, let's say you come over to Fairlight, you got to do something, and you want to see your video tracks. Well, now we're going to spend a little time right up here in this menu. This is our timeline options menu. And right now at the top, I can now click this button, and now it shows me my video tracks. Now, if I have multiple video tracks, it will show those as well. Now, I'm not going to edit the video, but it will give me that as a reference so that if I'm lining up clips and if I know I'm lining up to the dialogue or whatever I happen to be doing, I can see those and it gives me a different reference point, right? So now I can actually see where that cut is. I'm not guessing. So that's really, really useful, is to be able to turn that on if it's something you need. Something else that's really cool is normally when you do your playback, you press a button
on the med lab.
and the playhead scrubs across. That's what we use when we edit picture, right? But for sound, sometimes you would rather just process what's happening and just kind of watch it. And so I can put my playhead anywhere to start. Let's say I start right here to listen to this dialogue scene. And I go back to that same menu, I can now fix the playhead. So I just, by clicking Fix Playhead,
Identify the person.
now it's going to scrub underneath.
Emiliana Newton.
And I've got a lot of noise going on here, so let's just listen to this.
Are you sure?
Yes.
8, identify the person I'm speaking with.
Philip Maida.
Okay, so if that's what I want to do, then I can do that as well. It's great when you're working on consoles, but it's also nice when you're just listening and watching, because then you're not watching the page redrawn. It doesn't distract you. You can really focus. And if something comes up you need to adjust, you could do that right there. So that's Fix Playhead. And again, if you're in the right workflow, that's exactly what you might want to do. Something else that comes up, which is really nice, and I'm just going to move down a little ways. Put this up here now. I'm going to show you our scrollers. So occasionally you might actually want to see every frame of video in a timeline, like a film strip. So in that case, again, same menu, come over here, and I'll bring up my video scroller, and you see how at the bottom of the page, I now have every single frame. Now I can change the intensity of that. I can make it so it's more or less going to show, you know, segments of time. But in this case, I really want to see every single frame, so I'll go back to low level. So now I'm seeing every single frame. And then I can also turn on audio scrollers, and you can do them for multiple tracks. So you can do up to 2 tracks. I'll just do one here. In this case, the track I'm doing, you can see right there, I have it set to the explosion track. Now, would I really call it explosion? No, but I did that because it's in my demo timeline. But, so I have this timeline, and there's, of course, my explosion. So if I play this, now I can actually see the frames, and I can see the waveform together, which can be really useful.
Explosion, and it surrounded the whole ship.
Okay, and it's off. It's close, but it's off. And so what I can do with these scrollers is they don't change my clips. They let me move my playhead. So I'm able to scroll through this, and I can change what I'm looking at. And what's really nice is I can actually double-click any frame. In this case, the sound effect's really supposed to start on the first frame of the spaceship. So if I double-click, come on, mouse, sorry. You know what happens when you use someone else's mouse? It's like, wait. All right, so when I double click this, I can see that I'm off by about a frame, okay? So if I'm off, you know, frames don't count, right? Well, in audio, it does, right? A frame actually counts. Frame and a half, 2 frames is like a year. So if I want to adjust this now, I can go up to the exact clip that I'm working with, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And as long as you turn off your snapping, which I have right here, that's your magnet, then I'm actually moving within the subframes, okay? So I can actually really precisely place this if I need to. In this case, I just moved it to the playhead position, and if you watch, it's going to redraw that any second. There it is. So, and then when it redraws it, I'll see that I'm actually lined up just right, okay? So now when I play it,
And there's this explosion, and it surrounded the whole ship.
okay.
Yep.
So as you can see, would I use the scrollers for everyday editing? No. Or everyday audio, of course not. They drive me crazy. But for things like this, where I'm really doing some precise work, or if I'm working with animated projects or something like that, where I'm doing a lot of really intricate sound effects and things like that, then it might be fun to have my frames. So again, that's a really cool feature right here on the Fairlight page. So let me turn those off. Oh wait, there's more. So other things that we can do, obviously you can adjust the volume level on every single clip. You can add keyframes just by option clicking. So if you need to precisely adjust those levels, you know, for whatever reason, you can get in there and make the precision adjustments that you want to. You can also right-click now and add normalization. And before you say anything, I know it's cheating. It's like auto white balance, right? to use normalization. But if you're an editor, sometimes you might want to just get that dialogue track close, right, to be able to adjust those levels. And so right here, I'll just make those, let's say, -6. So now I've normalized just that one clip. Now you can also normalize, let's say, an entire group of clips. Just select those and right-click and say normalize audio levels. And now it gives me a choice. I can do those relative to each other. So it'll look at them as if they were one clip and do the normalization, or I can say independent and then we'll do each one independently. So that's really useful, and that's just peak normalization. Again, it's a cheat, I know.
Is
But-
it loudness normalization?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's high on my list. I've been screaming about that for a while, so they're working on it. They really are. Their list of stuff they're trying to cram in is like over 1,000 things deep, so if it's not there yet, it's on the way. That's all I got. So, because they're really, really focused on trying to get everything in here. So, it's coming in giant piles at a time, but, you know, there's only so much they can do, so let me get out of here. There's also copy and paste attributes now, so if you couldn't do that before, there's people who are like, well, how come we can't do attributes? You can now copy a clip and you can paste, let me copy that, and come over this one, and is it not letting me paste magic? Oh, I did it earlier. And if you throw things out of sync, of course, you can see that as well. Copy. There it is, paste attributes. So that'll let you do your audio attributes. So that's your volume, your plugins, and your EQ. So if you have anything applied onto it, you can throw those on. You can also do a remove, same way, just remove attributes. So it does work, you just have to be better at clicking than me. There. Okay, so that's enough, I think, for this particular timeline. Let me show you some other awesomeness. I'm going to switch timelines here. And I know I'm trying to cram a lot into a short amount of time, so if I go too fast or whatever, I'll back up if you need it. Here we go. This one's awesome. Okay, so any of you, this is my dialogue edit. So I took the same scene and obviously broke out all the characters. I do a lot of coloring because I can. And because I think splitting off the track colors makes some things easier to work with. It's up to you. You can change track color by just right-clicking on a track, and it changes all the clip in that track to a different color, or you can do individual clips. It's up to you. In this case, I have my dialogue edit now. I've got my room. I have everything all set up. And what I wanted to show you was we have to replace some dialogue. So now we need our ADR. Now, whether you do Foley work, anyone ever do Foley work? Foley work recording and also automated dialogue recording. You really do need that to be automated. It's got to be working. It's got to be on the money. And we have that entire tool set now built right here in Resolve 15. So, and that's pretty cool. And like I said, I can set these cues up on a laptop, or I can have someone sitting in there doing all those cues while I'm doing something else, and then I can just import the list. So, I can set every cue, but we'll break this down real quick. If you go to this setup right here, this lets me set my pre-roll and post-roll, so whatever I want when I record. And I think a lot of this depends on the talent, because some talent's really fussy about how much pre-roll they have and how many beeps they hear and what you're doing to them while before they record. Some people do not want to hear a single thing except a beep, or they don't want to see anything. They just need to focus. You know what it's like. So depending on who you're working with, you have that flexibility. Here I've got my pre-roll and post-roll. I can choose what track I'm going to record. You can set up your source. I'm not going to turn on a mic because I have no idea how much feedback I'd get right now, but it'll automatically patch it for you as soon as you select your mic. And you choose your guide track. In this case, we're going to do a clip for Emiliana, so I'm going to choose her guide track. And you can even name your files. So you can choose what file name or convention you're going to use there. And it'll always it'll save them to the same capture location as your bounce files. So those are going to go into the movie folder, default capture, but you can change that. So down here you can add characters, and what I had mentioned a few minutes ago about the beeps. Again, if you work with talent, you know what I'm talking about. This is a beep at the end point. That means they will only hear the beep right before they speak. And some people, that's what they want. And some people, don't you dare have any beeps. Okay, then no, sorry. You turn that off. You also have beeps all the way to the end points. We have a count in if they need to see numbers, or maybe you want the numbers, you can have that. A video streamer, you can have that as well. We even have a smart timeline. Now I'll tell you, the smart timeline is very small right now. But the actual line of text will show up. And if you have a huge screen in an ADR recording session room, then they'll be able to read it. That's the cheat sheet. Right now it's very small, but just assume that when 15 actually releases, they will have control of that and it will be larger. So, I mean, that's a given. It's just they're working on so many things that hasn't quite made it yet. The list itself, right here is where you can import a cue list, and it's as easy as import cue list. And any CSV file, I put one here just for the occasion. There it is right there. A CSV file, you just say import, and here's the cues. And again, I mentioned someone could be doing this on a laptop. And don't forget, this is DaVinci Resolve, so that means Mac, Windows, Linux, whatever system you have. It's no longer yeah, but he's got a Mac. Or no, it's a PC, he's got a Windows laptop. Well, it doesn't matter. Do the cues on whatever you have. Those files are all going to transfer back and forth. It does not matter. So here I just import my list. There it is, and now it's in my system. You can also export the cue list the same way. That's what I was mentioning earlier, in case you did it somewhere else. And then here's my list. I can select my cues. Let's make a cue. I'm going to bring up my video so we can see it.
8, identify the person I'm speaking with.
Okay, so we're only hearing the one track that I happen to have set up right now. And I want to set a cue here, so I'm marking it out right there. And then just say new cue. And it'll automatically set those ins and outs for me. So if someone was manually setting cues, this is how they would do it. I need to choose my character. It's Emiliana, so I'll mark it as her. And here's her line. I could type. Okay, so that's the line. Now, the cue is set, and if I come down here, there it is. It's already been made for me. And what's nice about these cues, if you click on any of them, it automatically takes the playhead to that position. So if I click this, it automatically goes back. I don't have to leave my in and out points. It just is going to come to that spot. So let's pop this out, close my meters, and we're going to look at this again. Let's go to the record now. And if I'm ready to record, literally all you do is you can rehearse, and obviously you need your rehearsal. So right here, let's rehearse one.
Emiliana Newton.
Are you sure?
Yes.
8, identify the person I'm speaking with.
And you see that the line went across. The text was there. It was just really small. I can make it bigger, but I mentioned the small part of it. So let's make this a little bigger. Now, if I had a separate screen, obviously this would be much bigger. But let's just, for the fun of it, and then rehearse again. And you'll see the teeny text. See it?
Are you sure?
Yes.
It's right there.
8, identify the person I'm speaking with.
Okay. So, and this is just rehearsals, but it does work. And whether you're doing Foley work or ADR, again, that's just the rehearsal. But as you can see, everything we just set up absolutely does exactly what I would expect. And then when you go to record, you just come over here and just click the record button, and it will literally record multiple takes right into the exact same track. So this ADR track will have the cue that will be the exact right length, and it's just one after the other on separate layers within the track. So you'll only see the last one that you recorded. The next one covers it up, but it's not overwriting it. It's just layering them up. I'll show you what those layers look
Dialogue
like.
comes up too, still, right? Dialogue still comes up.
You mean you hear it, or?
No, you see it. You can still see the dialogue, even though you're recording.
Yes, or why could, yes, when the one that was down here, you mean? Yes. Yeah, that showed up. I saw it.
No, I mean without rehearsal. Like if you
Oh yeah. Everything you just saw in the rehearsal, you could do it. So if you have talent that's not that on, and especially for Foley stuff, you're just going to lay them all down anyways because they might be awesome, right? So in that case, yes, record. And frankly, if you do this kind of work, you'll already know why it's important to be able to keep playing. So if you finish and your talent needs to hear the next cue and they're talking to you and you hear them, you need to be able to keep playing. You can do that live immediately. You can also keep recording. So if they're laying down the line and you want to keep it live and keep rolling, you can. So that's another option that you have, and those are both right there. This list right here, which because I wasn't recording, you don't see it, but it'll actually list them one take after the other, and it gives you a 5-star rating. So while it's happening, if you hear a 5-star recording and you know it's an awesome performance, you can just click the 5 stars and rate those ahead of time in the list so you can find them easily And then you just select them in the list and they'll show up in the layers so you can know exactly which take you're working with. Let me show you. So that's ADR, yay, right? Very cool.
Yeah, great.
It's big stuff actually, and the fact that it's all built in and it all works and it's all in here, very helpful. So what I was going to show you is, real quick, I'm going to hop out of this timeline and show you layers. And again, I apologize for having to talk so fast, but I have lots I want to show you. But this is what layers look like. So over here, I happen to have some different layers. Let me just go to the view menu, audio track layers. You can see them also when you're in the edit page. But what layers do is you notice that every channel now has space the same width as the channel. So if I have a mono track, I have a space that's the same thickness above it. It's so you have room to work. And you can have multiple layers within a track. And so for example, like I said, I wish I had an ADR session I could show you, but here I have a recording. Notice that when you go to edit something, do you see that when you grab the edges, how you can see the entire waveform? So it makes it really easy for editing. And I'm not even zoomed in, you know, I can obviously zoom in more. But now I can get in there and I can see that I have partial word, or I can really get that better. But what's nice about this is I can move things around. So I can listen to a take and I can move things one above the other. So for example, if this one's on top, I'll hear this take.
You are on the
Let me just solo that.
outskirts of Planet Q465b.
Okay, that's one take. And then here I have another version of the same thing. Let's see what this one is.
You are in orbit of Planet Q-465b.
Okay, so you can change, I could choose whichever take I want to use. I don't have to use both. I can have 15 things in here. And I'll do this for sound effects too. Sometimes I'm like, when we're doing something and it's early on and we're not sure, it's some of it's funny and some of it's serious, so I might have both kinds of sound effects, the cartoon version and the serious one, so that depending on the moment, if the director's like, I think we should lighten this up a bit, then I can swap those out. I've got the funny one right under here somewhere, and I could just go, okay, there you go. And let's try it that way. And I don't have to go back and find another sound effect. I've already got it in my timeline. It's just hidden, because you only hear whatever's on top when you're doing with layers. Other things that layers work, so when you do your recordings, your ADR recordings, I could have 15 of these on top of each other. If I select my 5-star, it'll highlight that one, and then I could just bring that to the top and listen to that. So there's different ways that you can work with that. Also, if you look down here, I've got some really interesting looking music, and that's because, let me make that a little bigger. What I've done is I've overlapped some music clips to be able to make crossfades. So if I were to separate these, you see I have 3 different cuts of music, and they're all on the same layer at the moment. But then what I want to do is I want to use the beginning of this piece over top of this one and just kind of fade them into each other. I could of course do that on different tracks, but sometimes you can also create new things by just overlapping them and then just add a little fade. And depending on what I'm doing, let's see how that sounds. And solo that track, solo this one. Bring up the movie. So there's a nice little stinger at the head of this, and then it goes into a percussion bit, which I want to do. Okay, so I just went from one piece of music to the other. So it's, again, would you do this all the time? Maybe not, but for me it works kind of well. I can jump in and out of a piece of music and back to what I was doing without wrecking my whole timeline.
This is only in addition, I can't speak, in Fairlight, that you can stack all these layers of audio.
You can do
when
it
you
in
flip over to the edit, it's going to be collapsed down, right?
Edit page also has layered audio.
Okay.
Let me
Something
just
to learn, something new.
see, yeah.
Oh,
The layered
look at
tracks
that.
also work here, yes.
Oh.
So
Look at
they
that.
do, it's just not as audio centric. So, you know, notice how I had to just move a bunch of stuff to get to it. But yeah, if you're
Do you
used
have
to
to turn
working.
that on or something?
Yeah, it's just right here under the view
Okay.
menu. It's been there, audio track layers. It's at the bottom of the view
Gotcha.
menu. See how I have
Okay.
the same thing? It doesn't look quite the same. On the Fairlight page, I can really see my crossfades because it's going to show me those. If you were an editor trying to do that, you'd probably stick music together on the same track and just add cross dissolves or something. But for me, I want to do it this way because I can really get in
See
there and
stuff,
finesse
yeah.
it and see what I'm doing. So,
What happens when you try to XML or NF that out?
yeah, that's a darn good question. I would probably
Not a good
bounce it
idea.
and make it a clip. Now, here's something fun, is for those of you who aren't familiar with bouncing, when you bounce something, it goes into, you can bounce it to a new track, Or you could bounce is the same as rendering in audio, basically. So when you have all your effects and your automation and everything else you've done, you just render it into one clip. Well, one of the options now is bounce mix to a track, but you can also bounce selected track to a new layer. So watch this. I can select this music stuff that I just did, right?
All right.
And by selecting this and going up here, let me select all that. And it's not letting me do it. Why is that? Well, I broke it. Just kidding. No, it should let me bounce this, which I've been doing for days now, so I don't know why it's not working. It could be,
There you go.
no, I want bounce selected track to new layers, what I actually want. So, I have no idea why it's not letting me do that. Let's try this one. I just want to see if one of them will give me that option. That's being fussy. But that does work, because I do it all the time with, I add a bunch of effects
It's
to a
basically
dialogue
mixed
track.
down.
Right, but it's doing it to a separate layer on the same track.
Gotcha.
So that way you have a layer with it finished, but also bouncing it to, I can also just bounce mix to a new track, and that'll give me the same thing, solo this, and I could bounce it. So
Perfect.
bouncing does work. Again, I wish I could tell you why that's not working at this moment, because bummer. But,
That's all right.
oh well. So it does work, because I've seen it. I have no idea why it's not now, but I could be also not doing something properly. Okay, so we did our ADR, and I showed you some layers. Let's look at some other cool stuff. We have, I want to look at our effects for a minute, because this is a really big deal. So I know some of you said you work with Foley and you work with ADR. I mean, one of the big things in sound design, it's not just about pitch, and volume is only this big of the picture, right? I mean, if we're looking at sound, your volume is your height, I guess. It's the presumed height. How loud something is how big it is, right? And then you have your width is your stereo spread. So if something is in a very small source, or whether something is really wide, super wide spread, that's our width. And then our depth is going to be our effects, our time-based effects. Things like delay, echo, and reverb are going to give things a presence of actual space. It takes it from a two-dimensional space and makes it like three-dimensional. And that's a really big deal for things like sound effects and dialogue. And this is where our effects come in play. And I have lots of reasons to use effects, but I'm just going to show you right here in the effects library. We have, this is our set, if you haven't seen them yet. These are the built-in sound effects that we have, our Fairlight effects. Again, all platforms, no dongles, no subscriptions or anything else you have to pay. These are just coming, they come with it and they work. You've got fun stuff, especially those with a music background. You do have the fun things like the chorus flanger. You've got modulators, so you can do some really interesting sound design or sound effect creation, or take something that's there and really modify it, make it sound kind of cool. But we also have the fixing, things that you need for repair, like dehummer, DS, and denoise, and those work, or our noise reductions work really well. And then we have the time-based effects, like the ones I just mentioned, echo, delay, and reverb, and I'll show you those. So, and the vocal channel, if you're used to doing really complex effects chains, especially if you came from a music background or something like that, so you really need additional EQ for a voice, or you want to add layers of compression instead of just one, then you can use this vocal channel, and it has a separate EQ and compression that you can add multiples of if you need to. So what I want to show you is an example here, back to my inspector. Now you can add effects to clips, or you can add them to entire tracks depending on what you need to do. In this example, I just wanted to show you, I have very standard sound effect here. This is just, I'll turn off all my effects. This is just a standard Foley footsteps.
Power.
Let me solo that. Okay. Now to me this is very flat. This is like a cardboard cutout somewhere. When you have something that's so sterile. Now for other people they hear footsteps, but it's the same as if you had cars that were made out of cardboard, or people a crowd that was made out of cardboard, right? There's no depth to it. It's there, yes, we have footsteps, but they don't sell me anything. And so things you can do is by just adding a little bit of chorus. Okay, I'll do it before and after so you can really hear it. Okay, so as you can hear, just footsteps, and then I add the chorus, and it just gives it that little bit of grit. Can you feel it? It's got just a tiny bit of extra to it where, and again, lots of people won't notice this, but it's the difference of something sounding real and the cardboard sound effect that I was just talking about out of the box. And then we also have things like delay, and I know these aren't exciting, but when you work with this kind of stuff where you do ADR or Foley, you need to make that sound feel like it's in whatever room or environment you're actually in. So here's a little tiny bit of delay. Same sound effect without, and then with a little delay. And now we're in a parking garage, right? Or now this feels like they're actually coming up a sidewalk in a space. You feel it, right? This totally changes it, and it was this much. So this is what that plugin looks like. So this is our delay, and I did almost nothing to this to make that sound, just a tiny bit, and then this is our chorus. And so like I said, you just have to get in there and kind of play with these. We don't have presets yet, but we will by the time it ships if you need them. But like I said, sometimes a little bit goes a long way. And I know for a lot of you, you're like, oh my God, who cares? But you know, it's a good thing somebody cares, because otherwise our sound will be really bad. All right, let's go back. Let's go to our reverb. Actually, before the reverb, let me go. Sorry, I have lots to show. Here's one. Here's a favorite. Ready?
Cryon.
You hear that? What does that sound?
Humming.
Oh yeah.
Hyperlight core.
You ever heard that before? Yeah, that's that little bit of, and
Quiet.
sometimes people don't hear it. I don't know how they don't hear it, but yeah, that's that nice 60 hertz hum. Somehow the lines were crossed, and on the set it happens. Nobody asked for it, but it happens. So this is a perfect example. That's power line hum. But I also hear, you can also, no matter how sterile the environment, screens have a sound, fans have a sound. There's sounds coming from everywhere. So hello, okay, cool. So let's grab our dehummer. I'm just going to throw that right on that clip. I don't need to do it to the track because it's just the one clip. Also, if you ever see a waveform that looks like that, you know you're in trouble. Just letting you know. So this is our dehummer. If you haven't used it yet, it's super easy. It's got 50 hertz if you have a European sound effect. If it was recorded in Europe, that's their power lines. Here we have 60 hertz. That's a default. I could also dial it in by just dragging the frequency. So you can pick your frequency. The harmonics are already set for you based on your frequency, and then you just dial it out.
I'm trying to fix it.
Gone. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, that was pretty fast, right? So let's do it again. Ready? It's nice if it's a showstopper. The
Hyperlight core came out a few days ago.
Okay.
Wow.
So it does work. And really, well, I'll tell you what though, for those of you who don't do audio but you do editing and they have one of those in there and you have to show something to a client, but that is your only take you really have to work with, you're like, you have a way to fix it. So, and as you can see, it really is pretty easy to do. So that's one of our effects. Now for more advanced mixing, we also have, just real fast, things like, I'm going to bring up my mixer. Now it's going to get a little messy, but just showing you a few extra things. For those of you who get into the heavier mixing, we do have the ability, let's say, to create an auxiliary reverb, which is nothing really. Why would I make an auxiliary reverb or an auxiliary track? That just means instead of putting an effect on every clip, that's going to be very processor heavy. And if I have multiple sources, like for example, this clip, I have a character in a space pod and her computer also in the space pod. The sound would be the same for both, right? If we hear it, they'll have the same reverb. So I will just create an auxiliary reverb like I did and throw it on there. And this is our reverb. So our default reverb, let's reset it for a second because I can. I'll just reset it. This is our default reverb, which is going to sound pretty much like she's in a cathedral.
Wait, where am I?
Let me make sure I have those up. And you can kind of hear, sorry, I'm checking the levels. Yeah, I've got it up. Okay, so this is the reverb, and you can really hear it's
You are in orbit.
Okay, she's like in a big bathroom or a cathedral or something. Okay, she's not in a space pod. Like, people have to work on their reverb. So this would make it bigger so you can actually drag and make this smaller. Once we have presets, you'll be able to just drag a preset from in there. I'm pushing hard, by the way, on those presets. Anyway, so you can change how big it is. That's going to be a really big sound. And you can just play around with these. I'm just changing my reverb. So now it's a much smaller sound. And because it's on an auxiliary, I can just adjust the levels right here, just like you might opacity or something. So now it's much
Where am I?
So it's a little bit.
You are in orbit.
Okay, so just a little bit. So you can do that on these. And if you do create an auxiliary, you have a send bar on every one of your tracks that you can adjust. Let's look at one more thing. I'm going to jump ahead to the future here. Now we have a finished mix. We have bounced our tracks or our stems, or someone gave us all of the stems from another application. And you're finishing here in Resolve. And now you're ready to do your finished mix. Well, you've got all of your different tracks. Here I've got my stereo mix. And I've got my stereo stems, I've got my voice, sound effects, and my music as separate stereo stems. I can also have, if you could see, a separate main. That's my 5.1 main if I wanted to. And down here I have my, down here I have my separate mono tracks for my 5.1 surround. Now let's look over here in my mixer at our panning. If you notice, this is stereo pan right here. Okay, so we've got my stereo pan. I can make changes to that, but that's still stereo. Let's go to one of my mono stems for a second. If I need to pan this, this is supposed to be 5.1, so theoretically this should be my left channel. So I need to pan it to the left. And I can manually go over there and pan each one of these where it belongs, left, then right, then center, and my LFE. And by the way, let's go down to my LFE is low frequency. As I go for my low frequency effects or my subwoofer. And down here, if you don't know how to turn that on, it's right here, it's your boom. If I turn that on, I can adjust how much of this is going to my LFE. And the longer that bar is, the more rumble we're gonna get, obviously. So assuming you've mixed that well, I've just added that, so you know how. If we haven't, well, you'll know. So I could manually pan these, but watch this. I have these 6 different tracks. If I wanted to, because they're mono, if you go up to the Fairlight menu and say link group, it will look at all your tracks and find every single mono track or pair that you have. So if you have 2 together, separate left and right, you could select both of those and link them, and it'll pan them automatically and treat them with one fader as if they were stereo. In this case, because I have 6, then it's going to show me at the bottom 5.1. Do you see that? And if I click that, all it's doing is, if you look up here, see how it's linked those together? And if I happen to look at my panning, you notice that it shows me one pan fader. And let me zoom in a little bit. Notice how it's actually labeled the tracks too. Left, right, center, LFE, left surround, and right surround. So it's treating all of that ahead of time. So, and the channel mapping is dead on. So if you do have those mono channels, you're like, what do I do? It's done. Okay, and you can just send that out. Or, even better, if you didn't want to, you can also just select those and unlink them. And now check this out. If I look, I now have, it automatically will do the mapping for me, even if I unlink it. And so these will be dead on, everything's set. The only thing I lost was my LFE. I'll have to redo that. It did erase that for me. One more thing, if you double click this, if I just double click it, I can set my channel wherever I need it to go. Or, watch this, something new in DaVinci Resolve 15, if I option double click, it now brings up object-based panning. So you had your 3D panning on every single track, but now you can also, in a more immersive environment, you have object-based panning. So if you're working with many, many tracks in an environment with a lot of speakers, which is becoming more and more demand depending on the environment, you might be doing something for a theme park or for something else where it's not your standard mix, and you need to do that right here, object-based panning. And you also have the ability to set your LFE right here by itself, so you can have LFE only on a track if that's what you needed. So a lot of people are like, how do I do that? Right here, okay? So this is awesome. It's kind of a glimpse at the future, but pretty cool stuff. And the thing, the mind-blowing part for me is all of this is, like I said, in the free version of DaVinci Resolve 15. So it all works. If you haven't tried it yet, it's kind of tempting, right? And even if you're an editor, it's really a fairly easy interface to work with. And if you do audio all the time, you'll see that it's not too hard to figure it out either. You know, when you're used to working with stuff, you're just used to how things work, right? We know what the end result needs to be. Now, how do I make this tool do that? Yes?
I noticed that you've got the waveform in the center, right? Not running along the bottom of
Correct.
the you know, the imagery, right?
Yes.
And I know I figured out how to switch that
Mhm.
in a prior version of Resolve, but I have now the beta 15, and I've not been. It's all running along the bottom. It's driving me crazy.
It's
and
in this menu right here.
I can't figure out where.
It's part of this timeline options menu. That's a really good question. And let me find it's. So it's I believe
That's in the Fairlight, so it's not in the edit. I have to go to the Fairlight.
you know what? Let me
to
look at
fix
the edit
it.
page.
Because that's where I was looking, and it used to be
Yeah,
in there.
you have those. I used to do a lot of the audio work in the page, but now that I have a choice, so
see,
this.
See that? I
Hold
don't
on.
want
See,
that.
there's this page. Hold on. I just let's see that. It's showing it. I thought they had the option
It's
to show
not
the
there.
whole thing. Yeah, they did take that. You know
That's
what?
where
I'm
I
wondering
went
if
looking.
that may be a setup. Yeah, that would make me crazy. I couldn't do that. So that may actually be a menu item. I'll look because unfortunately there's so many menu items now. I don't. I would have to look for that one. But I'm pretty sure that you can do it. If not, just come over here. Don't be afraid of the Fairlight page. It's fun, right?
Yeah.
Do I make it look scary?
No.
No, I mean it really isn't scary. It actually is fun, and there's a lot of really cool, neat things. So for those of you who really like working with audio, things like you can right click. Let me go to a different timeline since they haven't kicked us out yet, but I know they will. So I can do things like, let me turn this down. I can click, if you right click your stop button now, you can say stop and go to last position. So although you can easily loop your playback without setting in and outs now, if I play through
Ellipse
this,
cryopod has lost
watch what happens when I stop.
His oxygen level is critical.
When I stop, it goes right back to where I was. So if there's something you're reviewing in a little section,
Ellipse
you can set that on off, and that's actually a shortcut. Is that one?
Ellipse cryopod has.
Okay, so, and those are under the, oh gosh, I'll get this wrong, I'm sure. No, it's right here. So, you can turn that on, and there's also play again. So you can do different things depending on how you have it set up. Just don't forget to turn that off, because it will drive you crazy if you have that on, and every time you stop, it keeps jumping to the wrong place. But as far as usability, I totally recommend getting in there and diving in and playing around, because you can't, it's audio, and it's not destructive. So just make a copy of your project, and then spend time trying everything. Right? And plugins, try everything.
I've just a quick question. Oh, sorry.
No, that's, I just wanted to ask quickly, can
Shoot.
the sound library access the Apple loops in Logic?
That's a really good question. I have done the samples from Logic.
Oh,
I use done a lot of stuff in Logic. So yeah, I've done this. I've indexed the samples.
okay.
That was the first thing I
Great.
tried.
All right,
I think the GarageBand stuff too.
okay, good.
Because I was like, what do I have right now?
That's a
on my
huge sound
laptop to try
library right
this
there,
out?
yeah.
So yes.
Yeah.
So mine's a workflow thing.
Okay.
So now that we have audio with the editing, so what happens when the producer makes the changes, and then how easy is it to conform your time? Like, so you've now done a very complex mix with a lot of automation and stuff like that, and then the editor makes changes. How do
That
they
never
like?
happens.
Yeah, but how does that work? Is there conform tools, or can you say like hands off this certain stuff, or what happens? Does it get messy when it goes back to the editor and they make changes, and then they kind of blow away a lot of the work you do, or how does that work?
Well, you know, this is
Because
the
like,
age
some
old.
things you don't want the editor to just chop up.
It's
and,
the age old question, isn't it? So part of it is, and again, it just depends. Like if you're working on scenes versus reels versus long
Sure.
chunks versus small. I know, we're done.
We went past 5.
Oh my gosh. So I know, but they're so
Watch
awesome.
your eyes.
So workflow wise, I think it would be a matter of them, of having your character, having them, how they make their changes. Now, do you think that it's going to be like, is it one little section of a timeline, or is it going to be
well,
like
I'm
all
feeling,
over the place?
I have a feeling this is going towards no lock.
Well,
Workflows.
I don't think that'll necessarily be the case. I
Yeah.
think it just depends on how you do things. I think that you can. I think that part of it is going back to the edit page. You can stack timelines now, right? So you can do a direct comparison.
But it's almost like it becomes the editor's job then to like kind of, like for instance, a lot of times you don't want them to touch the music. Like they might make, like a lot of times now it's you send stems back, right?
Right.
And then they work off the stems, and then you conform to what they've changed.
Well, and it might be better if they have the ability.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
was
that-
it really? Is
that's
that good? Oh, awesome! I'm glad you liked it. Everyone's still. Well, I think part of it is if you can teach them when they do their edit to do like if they insert something and move it all over. Now you can lock off.
But
You can
it
lock
will
certain
follow
tracks
that,
like the music.
right?
Yes, it will. That's what I'm saying. Is so when they make their changes, theoretically, what I would do is keep a copy of your timeline. Give them. I duplicate everything. I just save all it. So, but let them make their changes and see what they actually did. Because a lot of it may just be a matter of okay, extend the shot and I'll. But if it's anything that involves pictures, you have to do it here, and the audio tracks will all follow. If you have little clips, And if they make a change, all those audio, the video clips will change with it because it depends on what kind of mode you're in. But as you change something, assuming that you have things that are synced, they're going to stay together.
I mean, the nice part is then the changes will instantly come over.
Right.
Can he get you anything?